All right.
Are you ready?
I'm ready. We live in an age where neo-pagan LARPing and New Age sparkling appear to be rising in popularity as man's insistence to reject God is manifested in neon-colored hair, tarot cards, and funny tattoos.
Threats as these are to a decent way of living, the good of a Christian society. Are they or other perversions like them the greatest threats to Christendom? Or is something else? What if secularism itself was the greater enemy to the church, which paved the way for these eventual theater kid theatrics?
Comparing Calvin with the modern secularists, which give us this goofy world of lame believe, we'll discuss the willful and malicious intent of man to reject the one true God at all costs.
That in the final analysis, you will be able to know your doctrines
and know your grains.
Ladies and gentlemen, Seth,
Cole,
all the faithful, we are so back. We're so back.
So back. Welcome to Doctrines of Grains, Season 2, Episode 1. And I'm sure that you all have been anticipating this as much as we have.
All 5 of you, that is. But we have so much to cover, so much to explain. If you've never been familiar with the show, don't worry, we're going to get to that. But first, as the intro indicated, we are a show that focuses on doctrines and grains.
Yes.
And if you've never watched any of our episodes, this is the portion where we focus on the grain. So, Seth, tell us what beer is this? Where did it come from? Why are we talking about it?
So we've got a Väsen Brewing Company. Actually, it's not like that at all.
Yeah, I was going to say wrong culture. Totally wrong culture.
This is a Norse. This is literally called the Norse Double IPA, and this is from Väsen Brewing Company in Richmond, Virginia. This is a farmhouse India Pale Ale. This was recommended by my pastor, and I'll give him a shout out, Joey Tomlinson, and he I'll see if I can get him on the show.
I was about to say, I'm so glad that you said that because I didn't even think about this till right now. But there's a lot of, Seth, it's been over a year since we've produced anything for the show, and there's like totally been nothing that's happened in the Reformed world, like nothing dramatic at all. And I didn't realize doing a Norse themed beer, like hopefully we're not accused of being, neo-pagans or racist or
LARPers.
Anti-Semitic or something. But yeah, so a Norse Double IPA. Yeah. So pastor's choice, pastor's selection.
That's right.
You want to crack these bad boys open?
Yeah, absolutely.
Layers? Let's do it. Oh. To the king?
To the king.
Mm-hmm. Wow. All right, folks. So let's break this down. All right. This is where we got to be real men for a second. So this already means a lot to me, not just because pastor selection. That's really cool. Those of you who were with us in season 1, our very, very, very first episode
was a double
IPA, not just any IPA. It was double IPA from literally right down the street.
Yeah.
We like to focus on local beers. Here's another. I believe this is a Virginia beer, right?
Yeah, Richmond.
So I will say, this is better.
Well, I can't even remember that double IPA.
Yeah, what did we even talk about
2
season
years.
1? What did we do? Yeah.
But no, this is delicious.
This is it does not, it really doesn't taste like a double IPA. It actually, to me, almost tastes like a triple. There is the hint of the bitterness that's usually associated with an IPA, but there's way more, it says.
This is way more floral.
Yeah, but not citrusy. Like this says Citra on it. And,
I can
but it doesn't
taste
citrus.
I got it.
Maybe I didn't. Hold on, wait, let me.
Come on. I'm already, 4 sips in? You're behind, Cole.
That's actually par for the. I was checking up on season 1, and it was actually quite concerning for a holy man as yourself to always outpace me in these regards. But except for what was the one episode? It might have been the Nut Brown Ale, where it was like 2 minutes in, and I was like, I need another. You said, the shower beer. Yeah, I don't really taste the citrus as much, but there is a ton of flavor, and I like it, and it's smooth. Mm-hmm. There's not a bite. There's usually a bite with an IPA, but not with this. As we break this down, folks, it's so you get an entire pint in the can, 8% ABV, which is solid compared to most beers. Now for double IPAs, I think we've done others in the past that had a higher content, but I will say this does not taste like an 8%. This
it's
is like
not
a
super alcohol-y.
Yeah, no. Like this is dangerous, I think.
Yeah.
This is dangerous.
Which means like later on in this episode, you're definitely going to be like, oh, that was an 8% beer.
In all things, eat, drink, do all things to the glory of God, right? But let's talk to folks about our grading system. So 0 to 3. Right. So it's a scale of 1 to 10, but or 1 to 3 is dog water.
Yeah, dog water.
Absolute trash. We're never going to talk about that. We're going to forget about it. We can just hide that in the neon lights, right? But then 4 to, I believe it was 7. Yeah, 4 to 7 is like anywhere between it just barely made the cut, like I will finish this drink, to you know what, I might get another one. I might get another one. 8 to 10 is like
talk of the town.
Like tweet Donald Trump, make this America's beer. Like 8 to 10 is like this will, kiss babies and shake hands.
Okay, so hold on. You said that, and I just remembered this like patriot dad, like this is the most patriotic beer of all time, right. And like it was just over the top and ridiculous. Like let's make actual good beer.
We're talking about Talladega Nights. That could have been one of the beers sponsored in that movie, right? So where do you think this one falls?
All right, first number that comes to mind. 7.
Wait. I was gonna say we should do like 1, 2, 3, say at the same time.
Oh, okay.
Well, no, it's 7. So just go ahead. It's
well,
7
I always change mine, right? So
yeah, you do change it. It's always high, but I actually think I might outdo you on this one because I actually really like this one.
Okay.
All right, so 1, 2, 3, 8.
10 point. Oh.
No, I think it's an 8.
You think it's an 8?
I think it's an 8 because
I was gonna say 7.9.
This might be the best double IPA I've ever had.
Oh, nice.
Yeah, so shout out Pastor
Very
Joey.
nice.
It's Joey, right? Yeah. Pastor Joey, thank you.
Well done.
And if we get nasty emails or texts about, just like we did in season 1 about, why are y'all promoting alcohol? I'll just say, hey, take it up with Pastor Joey. so that's all that happens every season.
His number is 555.
No,
Well, okay, so you're the one outpacing me on beer reviews now. So a lot has changed in 2 years, ladies and gentlemen.
Yeah, we should. I guess that's a good transition for that. We'll just move on to the chaser.
Yes.
Ladies and gentlemen, do you have a favorite local wine, beer, whiskey, moonshine, or mead? Let us know. Get a shout out, get some laughs. Know your doctrines and know your grains. Yeah, Seth, so let's, first of all, so now that we've got the grains out the way and we transition, what is Doctrines of Grains? What is this show? What were we thinking? Do we know what we're doing? Did we ever know what we were doing?
Absolutely not.
Nope. Not a chance. We actually were just sitting here talking about like, how did this show like even come about? We had met. Well, like my family, we were visiting a church and Seth was preaching at the time. And we were like, but we both really like theology and we both enjoyed getting together and cracking open a brewski.
Yeah.
And we had both flirted with podcasting individually before, but we also were like, there's so many Christian podcasts.
Yeah.
And they all doing the same thing.
And so we need another one.
Well, right. But we were asking ourselves, like, what would be something unique that like no one's doing and that would provide a different kind of benefit for people? And I think we literally both had drinks in our hands. We're like, oh, well, what if we had like a Protestant Pints with Aquinas? And it's even better because, wait for it, it's correct.
It's Protestant.
Yeah, right. It's true. And we were like, well, that would never happen. We would never do that. And then like 2 weeks later, we were trying to.
Yeah, I don't even remember all of those details. I just like all I know is we started recording one day with beer and like we just like threw this idea together.
Yeah.
And then kind of developed it. Like I think by episode 3 we had like the rating scale and we had like the grains, the chaser, the doctrines.
A pseudo plan that we still have a pseudo plan.
Yes.
And that is, folks, we wanted to find the balance. Well, again, we wanted to do something that no one else was doing. We wanted something that was informative and entertaining, because usually it's one or the other with Christian podcasts. Right. It's like you basically do diet seminary with one, or you make memes out of the other. We wanted to be able to do both, which I think we had plenty of memes from the first season. We definitely irritated people.
Yeah, the most memorable one is that there were babies baptized in beer at one point.
Yeah, that's a historical fact. Yeah. Like you could totally look that up. Reviewing last season, we accomplished some things. I think we theologically normalized the consumption of alcohol. To the glory of God.
Amen.
We got people introduced to John Calvin, and believe it or not, we didn't catch on fire, right? Because that's how we talked about how that was both of our upbringings in some respects, like Calvinism was a bad word. And so what we're seeking to do is both those things, like show the enjoyment of God's creation and work through historic theology.
Yes.
It can be done. At least we think. We'll find out.
We're still working all this out.
Yeah, we're still,
as you can tell.
Clearly. I was going to ask, Seth, we took a year where we did not produce anything.
We did absolutely nothing.
That means that we weren't doing anything, right?
Yeah.
Right?
Just like sat on our couch and like ate potato chips and we're like, I guess Biden's the president.
Right. Well, and there was definitely some versions of that for sure. But
Yeah.
folks, we took such a long hiatus because like life actually intervened. Like no kidding, in the space between the very, very last Doctrines of Grains episode to this moment, 2 children have come into the world.
That's true.
Which is crazy. Jobs have changed. Churches have changed. Churches have come into existence.
Right.
What else? Seminary.
I'm gonna pull this away from you.
You're good.
Just, there you go.
I'm a loud guy.
Yeah.
I'm a loud guy.
Yes, you are.
Seminary creation, not creation.
Not creation.
Graduation.
Creation has happened.
So it is seminary graduation, seminary entrance.
Yeah.
Deployments,
a whole bunch of stuff.
Yeah. You want to speak to that a little bit?
I have no idea. Like I'm still
too much,
trying to remember the first IPA that we reviewed, and no. So we were like, okay, season 1's in the bag. We knew that making season 2 would be a lot more difficult because you were going to be.
I was no longer going to be in Virginia.
Like they all moved to Florida, which happened like in the middle of the season.
Yep.
But you were doing training and stuff, and so we could finish season 1.
Yep.
And that's how we got to like the Florida IPA, which was so good. No, it wasn't an IPA. It was a blonde ale.
It was very good.
Yeah.
That was from Swamphead Brewing.
Yeah.
Thank you guys for that.
Anyway, so then like we finished up. I think I graduated seminary at the end of that year.
Yep.
And then you came in. We were able to interview Ben Garrett, which was awesome.
We could always do it again, Ben. Please. Please. Oh, Brian, Eric, Dan, anyone, please. Anyone
for tennis?
Please.
And then like life just kind of took off.
Yeah, it really did.
And it just made the most sense to be like, okay, we finished that season and let's just take a break. And
yeah, and then that break turned into like a hibernation. And then that hibernation was near death's door because it kind of like, it's like, oh yeah, we were doing this thing for a while. But funny enough, it was you folks, thank you so much, who were like, hey, where's season 2? And we're like, oh yeah. We need to get to that.
Yeah, constantly being like, hey, you guys, you actually did stuff that was cool. And we're like, wait, what?
And then in light of new jobs, new kids, new places to live, et cetera, we were like, we'll just actually create all kinds of other new stuff. Like now, Christus Rex doesn't exist anymore. Politica exists, and it's with Battle and the Bride.
Yeah.
So that's we're bright
joining
idea.
forces.
We're like more things to be responsible for. We'll do that. And then we're like, and we're going to resurrect Doctrines of Grains. So you guys asked for it. If it's garbage, it's your garbage. So
but the beer is not garbage, and neither are the doctrines.
That's true. And
so everything in between, it's just us.
Right. And the themes that we've always preached of knowing your doctrines, know your grains, support your local community, because we always do local beers. You guys can always recommend different things for us to try. Please, in fact, do. We would love that engagement. And just maybe one day, it's my dream, Seth, for this year, for 2025, that we would have an official beer for Doctrines of Grains.
That would be awesome.
That would be awesome.
And if we don't, we will have to, in season 3, work on making our own.
Yeah, well, that was actually a topic of discussion for a long time. There's some shadowy influencers who kind of support Doctrines of Grains in the background. We won't mention them yet.
They're the elites.
Yeah, the elites of Doctrines of Grains, who we are definitely going to yank in here at some point. But we all kind of flirt with the idea of like, what if we just made beer? That'd be cool. So stay tuned for that. Possibly, maybe. I hope not. It'd be way easier to just drink other people's beer. But
no, one of these days. I'm serious. We've already talked about like maybe not this year, but like next year, we're going to create a system in our backyard to grow our own hops.
That would be nice. Yeah, that'd be dope.
And that's my dream, is to make a drinkable beer.
ATF has entered the chat. So I think to kind of round out this chaser, folks, if you've never heard anything from us, please go check out our season 1 stuff, because we had if nothing else, we had a great time We had a great time. And I think there was a lot of solid content that came out of it. But going forward, for those of you who've been with us, we're going to jump right back into the institutes. We're going to keep knowing our doctrines and knowing our grains. Like, we're just going to have a great time.
Yeah.
Delighting in God's creation and delighting in God's word and historic Protestantism. So
Can I finish this off with a small story, a small anecdote?
Please go ahead.
Familial anecdote. One of the reasons I felt compelled to start season 2 again, it was always kind of in the back of my head, but my daughters get to choose what they listen to at night to go to bed. And my oldest, she would ask, Daddy, can I listen to you and Mr. Billiot, your podcast? I'm like, yeah, sure. So I just pick an episode and started playing that. And at one point she's laying there. She goes, Daddy, do you think people who don't believe in God listen to this podcast? And I said, well, I don't know, honey. I think there are some people who've messaged us who don't. And she goes, well, I think that they should, because I think that people who don't believe in God, I think if they listen to your podcast, they'd learn about who God is. And then I was like, okay.
yeah, even with light beer. Yeah, even with.
Yeah, then my wife, she had overheard the conversation. She was like, so how do you feel about that? I was like, I think it's time.
It's time.
Yeah.
Super based, by the way. Young men, brewskis, a family, daughters, sons. That's the way to do it. That's the way to do it.
In Christ.
It's what yes, of course. Yeah, you caught me there. But yeah, that's what the elites don't want you to know. The elites don't want you to know.
They don't want you to know this.
Yeah, they don't want you to know. You will be most fulfilled in life when you obey God. Crazy. It's a big secret. When you obey God, when you literally be fruitful, multiply, subdue the earth, right?
Kill your sin.
Right. Yeah, that's what you'll find most joy in life. It's what the elites don't want you to know. So with that, it's actually kind of a topic of Calvin's conversation today for us and the Institutes of Christian Religion, Book 1, Chapter 4. And we'll connect that with our cold open. You ready for the doctrines?
I'm ready.
Let's do it.
Let's go. Hey there, coffee lovers. You know we're all about bold flavors and even bolder convictions here at Doctrines of Grains. That's why we're proud to partner with 7 Weeks Coffee, where every sip fuels a culture of life. 7 Weeks Coffee isn't just about top-tier ethically sourced beans. Every purchase directly supports pro-life pregnancy centers, providing resources and care to mothers in need. That means your morning brew does more than wake you up. It makes a real difference. And because we know you love great coffee with a great cause, we've got an exclusive deal for you. Use promo code GRAINS at checkout for 10% off your order. So grab a bag, fuel your day, and stand for life, 1 cup at a time. Visit 7weekscoffee.com to get started, and don't forget, promo code GRAINS saves you 10% on your order. Now, let's get back to the show.
All right, folks, jumping into the doctrines, we're going to throw a curveball. Here's from Orestes Bronson, who was a member of the Progressive Society that literally started the U.S. Department of Education. Quote, the purpose of the society, which oversaw the public school movement, was to get rid of Christianity and turn our churches into halls of science, to establish a system of state. The national school system, all religion was to be put out of it, and nothing was to be taught except that which was verifiable to the senses. Parents were to be forced to send their children there. Wow, it's almost like all the conspiracy theories about government education, it's almost like they're not conspiracies.
Right.
What does that tell us?
Wasn't he a Freemason?
Yes, he was.
Okay.
Wow.
Just
okay.
throwing that out there.
Have fun
Anyway.
with that, folks. All right, Seth. So why would anyone ever say such a thing?
Because they have your best interest in mind.
Right. That's they're just looking out for your children. Right. So as we connect Calvin's Institutes to our cold open, Seth, and we talk about threats to Christendom, we talk about secularism. What is it about secularism, just from, a priori, like right from the jump, that is antagonized to Christianity? Okay, all right. Limit yourself to a sentence. Yeah. I saw the twinkle in his eye of like, where do I begin?
Well, Cole, funny you should ask. Well, all right. I mean, you have the Enlightenment idea that basically God doesn't exist, and that the rational thinker, the true thinker, the intelligent man, does not take that into account. And
he becomes essentially his own God in doing so.
Right. So the goal is to create an entire society of people who can function at a high level technologically and civilly and reject God altogether. And so that's...
Hey, it's worked out great, hasn't it?
I know, look at us. We got great skyscrapers. We got the most glorious, luxurious, and...
well, yeah, but also, what's a woman, Seth?
I'm not a biologist.
Right, exactly.
I
We're
apologize.
Enlightened by
as
own
enlightened as I
foolishness.
am, I just simply could not...
Well, we start there, folks, because again, it might seem disconnected. Like, what does any of that have to do? A 20th century Freemason, a government employee. What does, wow, there was plenty of those, weren't there? What does he have to do with
I feel like there's been a whole year between like the last episode.
Yeah, we're
just like,
Right. Oh, folks, you're not even ready. But what does that have anything to do with the 16th century reformer? John Calvin, a Frenchman, right? Completely different period of world history. How these things connect? Well, folks, today in chapter 4 of Calvin's Institutes, quote, the knowledge of God stifled or corrupted, ignorantly or maliciously. Calvin he's already addressed to this point, if you go back to season 1, it's where we left off, the biblical fact, as revealed by Romans 1, that all people intrinsically and inherently know that there is a God. He has sufficiently revealed himself in all of creation, so much that no man has a legitimate excuse.
Correct.
These aren't our words. That sounds harsh. Just go read Romans 1, right, folks? So he has built up his argument to this point, and now he's addressing, I believe it's the 21st verse, where it says that man intentionally suppresses the truth in unrighteousness. Mm-hmm. And so he breaks that down into either a willful ignorance or maliciousness.
Right. Which we see played out quite a bit. I was telling you before we started recording, the context of him writing this is obviously during the Reformation period where you had the reformers rediscovering the Catholic faith, basically, like uncovering the Catholic faith that Romanism buried,
right,
or obfuscated. And so the purpose of writing all of this was in order to inform the preacher and the layman so that they might know God and know him rightly. And in the shadow of all of this, you have the Roman Catholic Church with many of its traditions and functions that are steeped in superstition, not necessarily in legitimate tradition, but influenced by the culture of the day.
Right, or pagan cultures.
Yeah, exactly. And just done just to be done, rather than having any sort of scriptural backing or authority, etc. And the reason why we had the cold open that we did, and we feel like this ties in so well, is because we are in a very similar situation right now in our culture, where you have these people who have the Reformed doctrine. You have, and not even just Reformers. I'll say like legitimate, regenerate Christians who love the Word of God and love Jesus Christ with all their heart, who have the truth, and they are living in a society that is increasingly superstitious and increasingly being drawn away towards things like witchcraft, paganism, New Ageism, and you get people who are like so built into the idea of like, oh, my bloodline with the Norse culture, which this is why we said this is ironic,
right? But then they have a cousin that's Mexican or something. You know what I mean? It's like,
and so like, oh, this is the religion of my people, and you're like, okay, great, but they all converted to Christianity.
Exactly. The most pagan thing you could do is convert to Christianity.
And so we live in a very similar in a way, but there are a lot of parallels that we can draw between our day and Calvin's day, where there is a lot of ignorance and a lot of biblical illiteracy, where people believe that they're worshiping God because of the way they feel about it. When in reality, what we're going to see Calvin espouse in this chapter is that is not true.
Nope.
It doesn't matter about your feelings.
Even in its own contained system, it's not consistent.
Yeah.
So the idols that are built up, people still can't even live up to those idols. And so, it's interesting because well, in the cold open, when we talked about the neo-paganism that's for whatever reason kind of popular, or even the New Ageism or the witchcraft, again, those things. The reason why we want to focus actually on secularism is like secularism is that which has allowed the resurrection of those perversions. Mm-hmm. Because if you don't know what I'm talking about, you can just go shameless plug. Go check out the content of Politica Christiana. we were a Christian nation. So we literally had laws that prohibited people from living and thinking this way. But then when we open the door, at first it starts out with, well, we just want to focus on things everyone can agree on, like math and education and trust me, nothing bad will ever happen. And now we literally have Baphomet statues outside or inside of state capitals.
Yeah.
How do we get there? We get there, folks, because of secularism. This idea that knowledge can be neutral, and if knowledge can be neutral, then ethics can be neutral, and if ethics can be neutral, then everything can be neutral. It's like, no, folks, it's either pro-Christ or anti-Christ. There's no neutrality, right?
And that's the ironic thing about this mindset of like the modern education system completely eliminating God is that what it did not create a society of atheists necessarily. What it did was it created a society of pagans.
Right. Or even recently,
heathen.
as you were talking earlier, it came to mind. Someone recently said that like neo-atheism is dying. So when neo-atheism was the beginning of the 21st century, tail end of the 20th, was this idea of like, there is no God, and I hate him. It's like, wait, what, huh?
And I hate you. Right. And I'm smarter than you. And you're absolutely stupid. And I'm not going to debate you anymore, Richard Dawkins.
Well, what's so funny, and he's like, Richard Dawkins is like one of the fathers of neo-atheism. But even last year, he was like, I would rather live in a Christian England than an Islamic England, which was a crazy, that was God's sense of humor, folks. Or Christopher Hitchens.
like, oh, really?
Right. Please tell me more. Or
on.
Christopher Hitchens, who spent a lifetime literally debating people, giving talks about how God didn't exist, and then God providentially allowed for him to have throat cancer. So shh, and then he dies. Crazy. But anyway, so neo-atheism's dying because everyone, even the most ardent materialist, has like they're all acknowledging now that there is something out there. But what Calvin's I promise you, we're actually gonna get into the institutes. But what Calvin is saying is like, instead of just going to the plain and obvious and evident true God, they choose an idol. Because it's far more easy to submit to an idol. And so that's what you're seeing, folks, is like when people are like, oh, I'm spiritual, not religious. It's like, no, you're just an idolater. That's a crazy way to describe idolatry, actually. Right. And so that's what we're going to get to it, I promise, but that's what he's getting to.
We should probably get into it. Yeah, we should. You and I could like monologue on this stuff like
that's
all
why
day.
You guys watch it, right?
Get off my lawn.
That's for the beer. It's for the beer. But where did you want to start? Because I had a couple quotes highlighted. Well, let's start with the break. Yeah, go ahead. Read the outline.
We got 4 sections in this particular chapter. And remember, we're in book 1, chapter 4, and here are 4 sections. So the first section is, I love old like books and titles and sections of books because they're just wordy.
Yes.
The knowledge of God suppressed by ignorance, many falling away into superstition. Such persons, however, inexcusable because their error is accompanied with pride and stubbornness. Section 2, stubbornness, the companion of impiety. That's a good one. Section 3, no pretext can justify superstition. This proved first from reason and secondly from Scripture. 4, the wicked never willingly come into the presence of God, hence their hypocrisy. Hence, too, their sense of deity leads to no good result. I feel like we've spoiled this chapter already. Anyway.
Right. Well, where did you want to begin? Because like I said, I've got a couple of quotes from each section.
Yeah, I've got a couple too. Why don't you start off?
Okay. Well, so right from the first, I've got 2, and they're a little lengthy because that's just Calvin. So here we go. He says, while some lose themselves in superstitious observances and others of set purpose wickedly revolt from God, the result is that in reward to the true knowledge of him, all are so degenerate that in no part of the world can genuine godliness be found. So ironically, the same folks today that tell you that they're spiritual, not religious, they still embrace depravity.
Yeah.
So in other words, their objection to Christianity oftentimes does come from that kind of neo-atheist stream where it's like, the God of the Bible is so mean and evil, and also let me go on living in an evil way. And like that's even acknowledged by other pagan secularists, you know?
If you hear a thump at the door, it's just my family. That's all.
That's how we're winning, folks, as children. So, but you know what I mean? Where it's like people will be like, again, I'm spiritual, not religious, and your God is so mean, but also like, I totally support the murder of 60 million children. Huh? You're like, what? Where's the morality there, right? Or et cetera, et cetera. But that's why I thought it was interesting, because Calvin is going to, like a surgeon, dissect all the inconsistencies that come from willful ignorance or malicious intent to choose another God over the true God.
Yeah. All right. I'm gonna keep reading.
Section 1 or?
Yeah.
Yeah, go ahead.
So in saying that some fall away into superstition, I mean not to insinuate that their excessive absurdity frees them from guilt, for the blindness under which they labor is almost invariably accompanied with vain pride and stubbornness. Mingled vanity and pride appear in this, that when miserable men do seek after God, instead of ascending higher than themselves as they ought to, they measure him by their own carnal stupidity, and neglecting solid inquiry, fly off to indulge their curiosity in vain speculation. Hence, they do not conceive of him in the character in which he is manifested, but imagine him to be whatever their own rashness has devised.
Yeah, pause. We've got so much we can cover here. This is really good.
So, all right.
You go first because I'm going to take up too much time.
Okay. I recently got back on X.
Look out, folks.
Yeah. So I had started a Twitter back when I first began to podcast and things like that. And I just never posted on it because it just wasn't fun.
Yeah, not at the time. It was awful a couple of years ago.
Yeah. And so I got back on X and like immediately I am like confronted with all of the algorithms of like Q and politics and like there's this weird mingling of New Age thought with Christianity, and then you have the people who are so obsessed with like whiteness right now that it's obscene. Like it's literally obscene. So you have this like weird culture of people who think themselves Christians, who are espousing things that sound like they came from the Bible, but all they're doing is they're like making God in their own image.
Right.
Now, that's very general. I just caught a lot of fish.
And inevitably you'll offend someone in there, but also we don't care. We're drinking a double IPA, dude.
Yeah.
Like anyway.
Come at me.
But so we could do other episodes and conversations about each of those topics, but that's not the point. So don't get too caught up in that, folks. The point is that we're living in a conversational time.
Yes.
And yet in which there's so much there's a huge quantity of information, so little quality.
Yeah.
And right.
Yeah.
But where this plays into what we're trying to get to, because again, we want to make the institutes in and of themselves are of course great, and they're the bedrock of classic Protestantism, and yet also like you need application for today. And part of where the application is for today with respect to what Calvin just said is Calvin's talking about how, again, it is so funny how the carnal mind, right, the unregenerate man, or even the man just in unrepentant sin, looks at the divine wisdom of God and either out and about scorns it or makes something in his own image, which we do see. You see that from the left, you see that from the right, you see that all over the place in places like X. But where this becomes applicational to you is like, it's easy, again, to point out the neo-pagan LARPers, be like, how silly and stupid, how ridiculous. Or the New Agers with all their crystals and funny hair. But like, folks, what the elites don't want you to know, like actually though, what they really don't want you to know, what you must know in 2025 is like, yes, those things are bad and we need to combat them. But secularism as a whole is far worse, and it's what's prepared the way. And I wanted to read some quotes because they reflect this idea of recultivating society in a different image other than what God has intended, because that's part of what any antichrist ideology is doing. It is looking at the creation of God and saying, just like the serpent in the garden, did God really say, is that really how it is? And so when you look at the people who have provided the bedrock of secularism, who literally changed the character of our nation, they did so through education, because what a man is taught, he basically lives in those. You can unlearn things, you can relearn things, but essentially what you were originally catechized with stays with you. So all of our cultural assumptions about how politics should work, how food should work, how healthcare should work, so much of that for you folks was given to you in schooling, whether you're aware of it or not. Sometimes more is caught than taught. And so these
Cole has a meme to read.
Yeah, these awful people, they played us. They played you, they played me. Let's start with the fathers of the modern education system, right? So Horace Mann, they were all humanists, by the way. They rejected God. They believed that basically man was almost divine with his reason. Like we were the true regents of God on the earth, if there even is a God. And so Horace Mann had articulated the following things. Education, then, beyond all other devices of human origin, is the great equalizer of conditions of men, the balance wheel of social machinery, and its salvation which comes through education. Salvation comes through education.
Yeah.
This literally is the paganism of old ancient Greek philosophy that basically said, oh, well, yeah, man is problematic and violent because he just doesn't know enough. He's ignorant. He needs better education. So if we can just teach man, everything will get better. Well, guess what, folks? With over 100 years of public education right now, are we a virtuous and godly society, Seth?
Why? In fact, we aren't.
Yeah. Believe it or not, Romans 1, in their wisdom, they became fools. Yeah, that's where we're at, folks. But I'll keep reading, but I see you got something.
No, it's okay. Like, just playing off that. I'm not here yet. But I recently watched a video where it was like, Star Trek versus Dune, as far as like the idea of like where we would be as a society.
That's such a you thing.
Where like, Star Trek was such an optimistic boomer kind of civilization,
right?
Where it basically is like, the more that you learn, humanity is going to become better because
transcend everything, man.
Yeah, you're.
Whereas Dune's like everyone's evil and wicked, and there's false messiahs. And,
yeah. Welcome to 2025.
Yeah, right.
So anyway, please.
Well, so again, continuing to prove Calvin's point that in the carnal mind seeks to recreate religion, recreate meaning out of literally anything else other than revealed truth, which would be so much easier for us, wouldn't it, to just obey God? John Dewey, the other father of the modern education system, said these things. This one's nuts. I can't believe, we already read the Orestes Bronson quote, right, which was troubling enough that they literally said, hey, the play was to separate you from your kids and to undermine Christianity. Like they flat out said it, right? But here's John Dewey, if you remember from when you were in public school, right? The Dewey Decimal System. This is that guy. He said, the teacher always is the prophet of the true God and usherer in the true kingdom of God. What? What? Huh? And he would have got children who know how to think for themselves, spoil the harmony of the collective society, which is coming where everyone is independent. Wait, what? So ask yourself this, folks. When you were in public school, were you taught how to think or what to think?
Right.
Were you taught how to think or were you taught what to think? You were taught, spoiler alert, what to think, namely anything other than the gospel, namely other than what God intends for society, for you, for your family, et cetera, et cetera. And so again, it's secularism, it's this divorce of God from anything, which allows for man to be God, deciding what's right and wrong. And funny enough, it doesn't work very well. Right. But anyway, I can keep on reading more and more secularist quotes who developed our education system, but we should probably keep reading Calvin.
Yeah. So
Section 2 talks about the stubbornness. Stubbornness is the companion of impiety. Did you have any quotes from there?
So I'm going to read Calvin quoting Paul, quoting the Psalms, quoting God. So in Psalm 14:1, because Calvin starts out this section with this. It also is in 53:1, I think, as well.
Yep.
The fool has said in his heart, there is no God. They are corrupt. They have done abominable works. There is none who does good. The Lord looks down from heaven upon the children of men to see if there are any who understand, who seek God. They have all turned aside. They have together become corrupt. There is none who does good, no, not one. So that's one of the passages that Paul quotes in Romans. And as he gets into section 2, he says, we see many, after they have become hardened in a daring course of sin, madly banishing all remembrance of God, though spontaneously suggested to them from within by natural sense. To show how detestable this madness is, the psalmist introduces them as distinctly denying that there is a God, because although they do not disown his essence, they rob him of his justice and providence and represent him as sitting idly in heaven. Nothing being less accordant with the nature of God than to cast off the government of the world, leaving it to chance, and so to wink at the crimes of men, that they may wanton with impunity in evil courses. I'm going to stop there. So basically, what Calvin is saying is that, yes, you know there is a God, but you are foolish, and in your heart you have said that there is no God, and then you've acted accordingly. But they haven't, so let's put this like practical. So they haven't like said, oh, there is absolutely no God at all. Like a lot of people nowadays may say that there is a God, but they may even say that there's the God of the Bible, But when you see them talk, when you read what they've written or how they say they know him, how they live their lives, they've actually denied who he is.
I know through my horoscope, man.
Yeah.
What's your sign?
And I've said this before, like, the be blessed culture. Oh,
Right.
Be blessed. Like, okay, what does that mean?
Right.
Okay, who's blessing me?
Correct.
Like, I get it. It's kind of sweet. It's easy, and you don't have to say Jesus. And but then I just keep going back to like all the conversations that I've had with people in person, the conversations that I see on X and Instagram, where you have these people who are like, oh yes, this is our Christian duty, and then they like go on with this like profanity laced comment,
Right.
Deriding people.
Wow, that almost sounds like a recent personal example. Isn't that great? Yes.
I'm just an observer half the time. It's
Right.
like these people, and I made this comment to somebody online is that I used to think that people were horrified that there's a written record of what we say and do, and that it will be judged by it.
We don't care, dude.
Yeah.
That's every Tuesday. That's literally every day.
Yeah. Like people are excited to have their worst thoughts written down and exposed to the world.
Yeah.
And what they're
you
forgetting.
what you just keep going, but what you just said is literally how Calvin closes this section. But go ahead.
What they're forgetting is that there is a just God
Yep.
who is keeping his own records, and
Every
he
word.
knows the even worse things that you didn't write down on X or Instagram or whatever text message you just sent. And you are going to be held accountable for all of that.
Right. Wow. Yeah. And don't get me wrong, folks. We're not purity spiraling in the sense of like, no, like, okay, Christian men, we've got to act. The West is crumbling, but there's a way in which, like, yes, have people looked at what the Crusaders said and said, yeah, see, they were wicked and evil. It's like, okay, well, that might not be the case, but some of the things that are happening in our circle, some of them really actually are evil and bad.
Yeah.
But what you just said, oh, dude, again, about the written account, Christ tells us literally, there's not even an idle word that will not go without judgment, right? So he closes this section by saying this, and this, I want to read this and then juxtapose this with one of these modern secularists said who developed our education system. So Calvin closes the section saying this: still, as no fear restrains them from rushing violently in the face of God, so as long as they are hurried on by that blind impulse, it cannot be denied that their prevailing state of mind in regard to him is brutish oblivion.
Yeah.
Bro, when you said that, I was like, because people don't understand, again, like we're so nice and so winsome that like the evangelicals need to understand there is no one who is just like okay with God. like what I mean by that is we have this impression that someone cannot believe in God, but if they're a decent, good, quote unquote, good person, like, yeah, they might still be going to hell, but like, they're like on the top of it, like they just missed it by that much. Where it's like, no. All sin is an offense to God. We should hate it. It's all that is good and true and beautiful. It's the opposite of that. And so it doesn't just send us into hell. It dives us into hell if it goes without repentance. And so we are not just, I just don't really agree with your God. No, as Calvin says, you are violently rushing towards the face of God to oppose him. And I think this is really highlighted by this quote, which came from one of these modern secularists. This is from Charles Potter, who was a member of the Humanist Society, again, who had a large role in the Department of Education. Quote, "What can theistic Sunday school meeting for an hour once a week do to stem the tide of a 5-day program of humanistic teaching?" He's basically saying, in light of what Calvin was just saying, is like, your puny God will have no match for our humanistic, materialistic efforts, even if he exists.
Yeah.
Even if he exists, we can outwill God by our enlightenment, our reason. You know what I'm saying? Like, It's absolutely nuts. It's absolutely nuts. But he was violent. He didn't really, I can tell you he knows now, but he was violently rushing towards his own oblivion, which is what Calvin's saying, which is nuts.
A good Bible isn't just a book. It's a sword, a companion. It's been with you through years of study, prayer, and maybe even a few coffee spills. But what happens when the cover wears out or the binding starts to crack? That's where Ex Fide Bibles comes in. They specialize in high-quality, handcrafted rebinding and restoration, taking your well-loved Bible and making it something that will last for generations. And right now, you can get free stitching, $20 in value,
when you use the promo code GRAINS at checkout. Visit Ex Fide Bibles on Etsy or check out their work on YouTube at Ex Fide Bibles and Stationery, because the Word of God should be treasured for generations.
But this is what the state of unbelief is, folks. It's not just this, we treat it oftentimes, correct me if I'm wrong, we treat it oftentimes like, oh, they just got the wrong answers on a test.
Yeah.
No. They oppose God, dude. Yeah. Like, what are you talking about? Anyway.
Yeah. I mean, you've got the people who are, they seem innocent enough in their inability to know God for who he is. But in the reality, they just simply don't know God.
Right.
The way that he is. And that comes from not reading their Bible or not subjecting themselves to teachers who are sound.
Right. Well, it really highlights, again, his whole point for this section was, quote, stubbornness, the companion of impiety.
Mm-hmm. And so there's a whole culture right now of people who are willfully stubborn because they like the words that unregenerate men are saying or women.
A lot of those.
Yeah. and it's just funny enough, like, well, they're all equally stubborn. The ones who like hold to them, like, no, they're saying what needs to be said, and it's like, okay, are they saying what needs to be said, or are they saying what's true,
or they're saying what you like,
or are you just so? And I'm picking up on like a lot of different culture paradigms right now.
Right.
So I'm not going to like dig into the details of each one, but the same attitude applies to all of them, whether it is that you're listening to the ranting female prophetess on the big stage, or you're listening to so-and-so's podcast with, the whatever, like new age, new wave, new thought kind of stuff that's going on, or like you're getting like the really deep political discussions that deal with like post-war consensus or revisionism or things like that. And like I said, I'm not going to get into the details because that's a whole can of worms you can get into right now. That's
which
very
is
hot.
Actually the point we're making is like, they're actually more important things.
Yeah.
Like, believe it or not, like there's actually more important things.
And there are people you should not be listening to, like literally should not be listening to, because even though they may have hot takes that may sound, they don't know God for who he is, and they're saying things that are offensive to God, and they're going to cause you to stumble in that same way. And so you need to, one of the big practical applications from this is don't be that guy.
Right.
Don't be the guy that Calvin's talking about in chapter 4.
Right. Violently heading towards your own oblivion.
Right. Which means that you need to put aside all of your X scrolling and your Instagram scrolling and your reel watching, and you need to pick up the Word of God and anchor yourself in the truth of God, and then surround yourself with great teachers, beginning with your local church. And if you don't have great teachers in your local church and the Lord's like tugging on your heart, you need to get out of your local church because they're not good teachers, you need to find good ones.
Right. So to make that incredibly practical for people, because you don't want to be too ambiguous or broad so that, like, for our own sakes, people don't think we're like, because there will be some people who hear what you just said say that we're basically doormats or that we're bigots somehow. It's funny how that happens, right? Where you'll say a common sense thing and you end up offending both groups. Right. Where
don't worry, I'm partway through a double IPA, so
a Norse double IPA.
Yes.
So if you're someone who says the gospel is we need to let the whole world into our country and even into your own home at the expense of your own kids, you probably haven't understood the gospel.
Right.
And if you're someone who says the point of the gospel is there's only, one group that is more holy than every other group ever that has ever lived, and we need to take back all of our traditions for that and kick everyone else out. Mm-hmm. That's also probably not the gospel. And yet also, and this is another hot take for a third group of people, not everything is a gospel issue, funny enough, too. So that's also part of what Calvin's... Notice how Calvin here is talking purely about the knowledge of God. Mm-hmm. So like he's not talking yet about Christ and his role of prophet, priest, and king. He's talking about purely the acknowledgement and worship of God.
Yeah.
And so it's funny because I know that there's actually plenty of ministers today who would, if I gave them these quotes with no context, I didn't say who was by, they'd be like, well, whoever this is, they're not focusing on the gospel. It's like, what? What are you talking about? Like, but that's where we're at, folks. So like, ironically, yes, we're a show that reviews beer, but we hope we give you some clarity as to like the actual issues.
Hopefully.
Right. But maybe not. Maybe we're just vague and mysterious. But anyway, so
Don't worry, we'll offend you in person once we get the gumption up,
right. Especially if we get enough of the Norse Double IPAs going. But
So I think we can move on to section 3.
we can. And I actually only have one thing to say about section 3. So I'll let you do what you want to do, and then I'll say my quick thing.
Well, I'll start off with what he says. In this way, the vain pretext which many employ to clothe their superstition is overthrown. They deem it enough that they have some kind of zeal for religion, how preposterous soever it may be, not observing that true religion must be conformable to the will of God as its unerring standard, that he can never deny himself and is no specter or phantom, to be metamorphosed at each individual's caprice. That is a great way to begin that. My wife and I were watching a show yesterday. They were trying to pit like a grandmother and a granddaughter against each other on the topic of euthanasia.
Oof.
And
wow, that's really awkward,
yeah.
actually.
So like the granddaughter is
That's really awkward.
so like neither one of them was wrestling it personally, but like the granddaughter is like supposedly a Christian and is like, no, that's not God. God wants us to know him for who he is. And then the grandma interjects and is like, and if that's true, then God wouldn't want you to suffer through stage 4 ovarian cancer. And
man, you got to take that up with Job, dude. You got to take that up with Job.
Yeah. And so it's like, even though like the grandma acknowledged that there is a God, then she denied the true God, even though there may be like a zeal
that's a
of
good
religion.
Point. Yeah, that's
like,
a good point.
She's denying the truth of God.
Yeah, that's a great point, because even amidst there are plenty of Christians today, particularly in the liberal denominations today, who all they've ever known is that liberal tradition. So are they still responsible for their sin of wrong belief, of misbelief? Absolutely. But in one sense, you have to give them some grace, in as much as that's the only exposure. Like, they've only ever known the priestess named Karen.
Yeah.
Right. And I never really realized that there are some people who that's their entire upbringing, until my buddies and I, we went to a quote unquote pride parade in Jacksonville last year. And we were the ones who were like, yeah, Jesus doesn't agree with it. We were those guys. We were those guys in that case. And we were talking with people afterwards. And there are some people who were saying, just like what you're saying, it was like, well, if God's all about love, then he would respect this or whatever, or love means love or whatever. It's like, I feel so bad for you, because not only is that just not true, like, and if you took the time to read the Bible, you know that, but like, you have been indoctrinated into a whole nother world that is it's of a God, but not of the true God, which is definitely part of Calvin's point here in all of this. The only thing that I was gonna mention, which does correspond to what we both just said, is at the very, very end, Calvin quotes a Greek philosopher. So watch out. Maybe Calvin didn't care about the gospel because he's quoting Greek philosophers, apparently. Quote, "It remains, therefore, to conclude with Lactantius, no religion is genuine that is not in accordance with truth." So again, like that's part of the reason why Christ said, "I am the way, the truth, and the life." Is like truth matters, folks, and there is only one truth. So even the litmus test among those who would profess to be Christians is still truth.
Yeah,
that's crazy idea, but that's what it is. And part of the application today of assessing, like, how is it that man suppresses the truth of God and unrighteousness is being able to not just see that in others, because again, it's so easy to do that, but even in ourselves. Like, where are the areas in my life in which I say that I believe the truth? I say I have the scriptures for why I shouldn't do this sin or that sin, and yet, like, I still continue to live in that sin, right? Which is, again, to Lactantius' point, no religion is genuine that is not in accordance with truth. You are not being faithful by harboring a sin that you know is not true, right?
Yeah. But then, who is the truth? And that is Jesus Christ.
Right. You just quoted Pilate. Yeah. What is truth? I am truth. It's such a base. That whole scene
doesn't answer.
So dope. Yeah. What is truth? Yeah. Man, you almost sent me on a rabbit hole there. But also, again, I just want to get this out of the way. So I actually owe all you folks an apology. So in season 1, we were pretty tough on Baptists. We were tough. We were tough on Catholics, and we were tough on quote unquote Thomists, and or quote unquote Reformed Thomists. It's been a whole year now. We've done a lot more reading, and still disagree with Baptists, still disagree with Catholics, still disagree with Thomists. However, I did not represent them very fairly in many of those things. And so far as the Thomists go, like, yeah, folks, sorry, whether we want to believe it or not, many of the reformers would have been labeled as Thomists because they used
Right.
a Thomistic apologetic, just like Calvin just
Augustine.
did. Right. Well, not even. Oh yeah. Well, definitely Augustine,
Yeah.
but the reformers, whether it was Calvin, Vermigli, Beza, Bullinger, Althusius, you name it, they were very, very comfortable with looking to the wisdom found in Greeks
Yeah.
and in natural law. And I was uncomfortable with that because I hadn't done any actual reading, but we've done the reading.
Well,
and,
my own
and
pastor,
it's okay.
he's like, you know, he's like, dude, Aquinas, like you cannot have the modern concept of the Trinity without Aquinas.
Right, but also, and I wish so on on Cosmos recently they've been doing this thing with like enhance and it zooms in. So I wish we could do that. So enhance, guys. I hate to tell you this, but like I had to do a paper for seminary recently where I had to look at Calvin's commentaries and compare it to other people's. Calvin legitimately in his Ephesians 1 commentary literally modeled his entire commentary after Aquinas. Well, I guess we're not truly reformed. It's like, oh no, woe is me. He based it off Chrysostom and Aquinas. I guess Calvin wasn't reformed. Crazy, but yeah, guys, we gotta. These are the silly kind of arguments though that distract us from our duty.
Right.
Part of our duty is what Calvin's handling here is to tell people you do believe in a God. It's just the wrong one because you're suppressing the truth and unrighteousness.
Yeah.
That's what we're getting at, folks. And that's part of what that can't just be on. I mean, it absolutely needs to happen on an individual basis, but it needs to happen on a corporate basis. So like as a nation, we have to get there again, folks, or else, as exemplified by the comments we shared from these secularists, you're going to have a society that intentionally undermines that which is true, good, and beautiful. Intentionally. Like they're very open about it. They want to destroy it. So unless we start having more conversations about this, we're not going to get there.
This is the plan. We are at the end game of their plan, and the plan didn't work.
We're in the end game.
Yeah, and now it's time for Christians to actually say, hey, you know what? We've got our own end game. It's the kingdom of God, and it's for His will to be done on earth as it is in heaven. And He's actually set up magistrates to accomplish His will. And so, you know what? We're going to step up. We're going to fill those spots, and we're going to begin ruling this nation the way that it actually should be ruled, the way that it used to be ruled, and it's going to flourish in that way. So we've now entered into the let's see, we've
final
covered,
section. Yeah,
let's see, we've covered what controversial topics have we covered now since we've
we always have a way of doing that, but what actually irritates people is we say just enough for you to not know what our actual opinion is, which is actually a lot of like what a lot of pub conversations are like. So we're keeping it true to the show, folks. So don't get too upset.
But on that note, we are going to begin offering a paid subscription to another.
Oh, that's true. A Patreon,
another segment. Yes, either Patreon or we're going to have it as a membership offer on thebattleandthebride.com, where you can actually get like
the uncut,
an extra 30 minutes,
the unhinged
of our actual opinions on these subjects. And
not that we're not telling you anything true now. It's just we don't want to be another one of those shows that's perpetuating division in the Reformed evangelical world.
Yeah.
But we also have our opinions. You know what I mean?
It's so easy to just like lob a grenade and say something controversial just to say something controversial. Right. And that's not what we want to build our platform on. We actually want to build our platform on the truth. But on
actually reading Calvin, that's crazy. It's like who in the Reformed world's doing that, right? But,
yeah, so that's an offer. We're going to call it like
to the foam,
or above the foam, or like something like that. And we're
everything from again clearly the Freemasons, but then everything crazy. And believe it or not, hasn't really been seen so much on this show, with the exception of drink ratings. But you might actually see Seth and I disagree on some things, and that's okay, believe it or not. But you will only be able to do that in that show.
Yeah,
because right here, we're just two guys. We're just having a great time.
Yeah.
So anyway, final section. Let's bring it to the final section. Let's get out of here. So in this final section, again, Calvin's rounding it out by really, really pushing the point that the rejection of God to embrace another is actually an incredible hypocrisy, because you're acknowledging that there is a divine there to be worshipped, and you know it, but you're seeking out again an idol.
Yeah.
This is just American culture.
Right.
Like I would even argue, and this is a dangerous thing to say, but that's a large part of American evangelicalism, because we've embraced versions of Christ that are not Christ, which is wild. And yet we're also, again, we're not a discernment platform. It's like, those new apostolic Pentecostal, like, we're not necessarily saying that, although the argument might be there.
We'll get there.
We'll get there. But the point is, folks, like, if we're not even having these discussions, like, we're not gonna right the wrongs. We're not gonna turn the ship around. And I wanted to harmonize all of the things we've said so far with this quote from the very end of the 4th section. Quote, "Still, however, the conviction that there is some deity continues to exist, like a plant which can never completely be eradicated, though so corrupt that it is only capable of producing the worst fruit." Oh, dude, that's such a bar. And the reason why it's such a bar is, let's embrace the entirely atheistic, nihilistic, hedonistic worldview for a second, which is the sum total of Western culture right now. Those who have embraced those ideals most radically are, say, things like communistic societies, which killed nearly 500 million people in the 20th century alone. So Calvin's point there of making a deity out of something else literally produces the worst death, namely human death, not human flourishing, human death, and sometimes physical death, but also cultural death. So whereas with communism, you saw literal death, what you're seeing in the West now by embracing atheistic, nihilistic hedonism is cultural or corporate death.
Which is very similar to communism, but
Right. Another episode. But like literally, it's consequences, or ideas have consequences, and what we're going through now, again, it has actual effects. So this contributing to human death in a figurative way, in a literal way, like again, our birth rate is not going to be able to sustain the West right now, and what we're seeing is the embrace to worship other things. It just produces the worst fruit, where again, we don't know what a woman is. We don't know what a child is, so we murder them, right? Like we don't know what marriage is, so we make all kinds of perversions out of it. We don't know what justice is, so somehow justice is, hey, this criminal over here rapes and pillages, but they get 6 months of jail time, if at all, versus someone who defended their own home and they're getting, or stood outside of an abortion clinic and they get 10 years. It's like, where's the justice? The reason why we're seeing all these things, folks, is because we have rejected Christ.
Yeah. Exactly.
Here. Good word.
Hey.
All right.
Here. So I'll finish off with his last sentence. "When at their ease, they can jest about God and talk pertly and loquaciously in disparagement of his power. But should despair from any cause overtake them, it will stimulate them to seek him and dictate ejaculatory prayers, proving that they were not entirely ignorant of God, but had perversely suppressed feelings which ought to have been earlier manifested."
All right, but wait. I know you're about to say something really profound, but I'm going to ruin it with something silly. I avoided that last sentence for 2 reasons. Loquaciously, I didn't want to butcher that.
Go ahead.
With the Norse speaking through me. But then secondly, when he said I'm going to be 24 for a second. when he said ejaculatory prayer, I was like, John, why? Why, Calvin? Why did you?
Because he didn't live in our modern mindset where
we're awful.
That word was like co-opted for something completely different.
It's the meme. Every day we stray further from God. He's not wrong, but I was like, my brother in Christ. Why did you? Why did you say that?
So basically, these fools.
Okay, go say your profound thing.
Yeah. Basically, these fools, like they. If anything were to actually like happen to them, they cry out to God, and all it does is just it gives this this evidence that they should have been there in the first place. Like they just were stubborn and decided they weren't gonna know him for who he is. I often. There are times when I pray about my children and ask the Lord to protect them from the temptations of the world, the lies of the devil, and then the callings after of the flesh. And so many people, they indulge the flesh, and that is through X. You need to just like giggle.
I'm sorry. I'm tired. I'm tired. I'm so caught up. I can't. Please keep going.
So you're doom scrolling and on all of that. Like that's an indulgence of the flesh. Yeah. And all you're going to do is you're going to continue. You have this continual lust for more. Yeah. Like you want more and more. And the only thing that's actually truly ever going to satisfy is the truth of Christ. And so as you continue to doom scroll, I hope that by listening to this, you will think, wait, I'm doom scrolling. I'm not going to get what I want. I'm not going to get what I need. I actually need to stop. I need to spend time in prayer. I need to spend time in the Word. And you're going to learn about God for who He is. And the things that you learn in His Word are going to sustain you way more than the random reel about like the random alligator that's just kind of like floating in the water. Like,
well, to your point, I mean, and to Calvin's point, those things, the things which are lesser than God because they're either opposed to God or they're just entirely not glorious. They're not true. They're not beautiful. They're not good. They don't produce good fruit.
Right.
So like I could speak from firsthand experience. I'm sure you can too. That again, the doom scrolling, I have never done anything productive after doom scrolling, right? Like read nothing good, or the old Southern saying of nothing good happens after 10 p.m. It's true. It's true though, folks. Like especially young men, like if we're going to heed the words of Calvin and all of this with respect to the knowledge of God suppressed by the carnal mind is, and wait for it, we should aim to not have a carnal mind. And from that comes righteous action.
Yeah.
Righteous mind, righteous action, righteous heart. Because in all this, like, it's good to read to see what Calvin actually said, because there's a lot of people that are Reformed even that are like, well, you know, Reformers believe this or Calvin said that. It's like, actually, like, let's just read Calvin. So on one hand, we have to do that, but on the other hand, we have to make application to right now. And man, we got a lot of work, don't we?
Yeah.
So
okay.
Even in this season.
We got a whole new season.
That's right, folks.
All right. Well,
You got any final takeaways? Usually give us like a final chart. I mean, you kind of did even there. So
yeah, no. The only thing that I have to ask for you is how goes the world?
It goes not well, but the kingdom comes.